Hi, and welcome to Boom It's on the Blockchain. My name is Alistair Caithness. We're on our 69th show. And today we're going to be speaking a little bit about green crypto consumers. And I'm joined today by our cybersecurity experts, Daniel Addison and John. How are you guys?
Great. Doing
Doing
great,
well,
Alistair.
sir. Loving being here.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes,
Let me just
absolutely.
bring up the there. So green crypto consumers. So let me bring in the first article that actually talks about this today. So I'll just bring. So this is in Cointelegraph this week. Green consumers want supply chain transparency via the blockchain. So, everyone's looking at this green environment going forward, especially the woke community. It's not only something for rich people to be able to do, poor people can actually be green as well.
Mhm.
So, but this is getting driven top down by governments, but really it's also getting driven bottom up as well by the consumers and what the consumers are actually interested in. So, I'll just open the floor and get your feedback on this then, guys. Over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, consumer base, like you said, from bottom up approach in comparison to the top down approach. So if consumers now products that they purchase and buy, they, like you mentioned, they want to make sure that these products are not tainted or from any measures, and blockchain provides transparency, right? Blockchain ensures that whatever through this supply chain, whatever I'm purchasing, relating to products like food, clothing, hair care products, and etc. I want to make sure that as it relates to the emissions, right, CO2 and things as production, I want to make sure that it's not, so to speak, tainted, right? And so that's the interest now. You're seeing this creative interest in blockchain because of its transparency. It's so on this ledger, I can know, I can make a decision before I buy something to know that it's, where it comes from, right? Tracking it all the way to the actual farmer, so to speak, right? Agriculture and et cetera. And so, yeah, with this green, that's the push right now. And so consumers, you're correct, Alistair. It's not just the rich people, but, your general consumer, from the stores on up, and even, in our homes. And so they're looking at blockchain for this, and it's showing some promise, right? As it relates, because investors are getting into this now. So
Yeah. Anything to add on that then, John?
Actually, it's interesting. This article came up. With my
mhm,
5-year-old in her school, they were talking about where products come from and how you can do this. And the teacher
mhm,
brought up an article, talked about kids did not know where carrots and farms were. So with this initiative, they can now, the schools can teach and track all the way back to where this carrot grew. So people understand that live in the city that have never seen a farm, that there's land outside the city. So this whole concept is not just in agriculture; it's also in our it's actually in our education now. Trying to
mhm,
be able to blockchain everything to ensure it meets the consumers happy. It
mhm,
gives us a green leaf, as they say, to turn a new way to make sure the products we get are actually safe for the environment.
mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this creates the massive double-edged sword that's out there.
Yeah.
So, my
Mhm,
background's in energy. Everyone here thinks they want to be green, but really everything that we purchase from China is manufactured from coal. So
mhm,
Mhm.
coal production in the world has increased rapidly. So most people
mhm,
think, oh, we're going green, but it's not. Increase in coal production. There's been a huge amount of increase in coal production in India. So they opened 51 mega coal incinerator plants. At the same time, China opened about 180. The rest of the world closed down 179 coal power plants. And then you've got places like Germany in that opening coal power plants as well. So ultimately, we're the consumer. We talk about the environment, but we really care? We don't. We just go down to Walmart. We want the cheapest product. If it says made in China, I guarantee that to everyone out there that is made from coal. If products are coming in from India right now, they are made from coal. Now, here's the double-edged sword. It's like, their economies are growing faster and faster. China's number one economy in the world probably now. US too, and essentially, the Americans might not like it, but India is growing really fast, and then India is going to become, by 2050, the number one economy in the world. So if these countries are going to become the number one economies in the world, why are we pushing this agenda of this green crypto blockchain transparency when we buy all our products from countries that are just increasing coal production to provide us product? It's the double-edged sword, I always think, there as well. And here's the thing. I don't think we should be telling China and India, what they should be manufacturing our product with, because, we're not holding them accountable anyway. We just want the cheaper product. We want to go into Amazon. We want to get this product right now. America's had their run of the country since post-Second World War. Britain was running the world since before that. It's a transitional period of time, and I don't see China and India stopping, so and why should they stop? They're going to run the world, people, and you've got to realize that, so does this all fit into that, guys?
Yeah, that's interesting, Alistair. You mentioned the double-edged sword, right? And the change, I just think it's going to take longer than what we think. We're saying, hey, we're trying to be this green, what is it, by, was it 2050 or a
we're not manufacturing any product, Daniel. It's like let's blame China. They're the world's factory.
That's exactly
the world's factory. Let's not blame them. They're the world's factory. Yeah. We want the product. That's what really annoys me when you've got the Green Brigade. I live in California. There's woke green people everywhere. I'm green because I can spend $100,000 on a Tesla. I'm green because I can spend all this money in solar panels on my roof. Do you realize that product was manufactured with coal? No.
Exactly.
So it's like, and we've got to stop this blaming China and India. They can do what they want. It's their economies. Unless we turn around and tell them, by the way, we're not buying anything that's made from coal production, which we won't do. Then, to me, it's like, what's going on with that? I'm not happy about this, narrative that we push here from the West when they're the world's factory,
Yep. It's the changing from we want it now and we want it as cheap as possible. But at the same time, we're saying also, too, I wanted it to be green, right? Or want it to be what we use in terms net zero, or to reduce, because we're seeing the climate changing. We using the word, and this is another discussion. John and I, we were talking about this before, about the climate change. And it's just, I agree with you, Alistair. We're currently just going through a transition period as it relates to changing of the guard, so to speak, right? And particularly who has the better structure to carry it to the next level when it comes to, technologies like blockchain technology, and in showing the proof of, is it effective or is it not, right? And so the bottom up approach, we're seeing is desperately needed, because we've been so long from a top down approach is what I am seeing, right? And so what we're moving to is, as we're seeing, this bottom up approach, and it's sort of how do we balance this double-edged sword? It's, in my mind, how do we balance, and particularly having a say from both sides to come to some type of conclusion as to how we move forward with net zero, right? Or green energy, or green consumer.
It comes down to manufacturing.
Yeah.
It's like, we want the product cheap. Coal's the cheapest source of manufacturing out there.
It sure is. Yes.
These are countries that are essentially developing nations. For people to say that India and China are third world countries is absolutely ridiculous. They're first world countries. When it comes to blockchain, India is the number one blockchain country in the world. I don't care what anyone else says. They're developing stuff so much faster. They're going all their students to it. They've bought into the technology more than any other developing nation in the world. And India is positioning itself to become the number one manufacturer in the world due to population size. They're starting to pick up all the big contracts. You've got all the big companies now moving from China because the cost of labor is higher to India, because it's easier for us to work with India because we don't have then, the English is their first, well, not second language, but they're used to speaking it anyway. So they have that.
Yeah.
And then essentially that's, building up there. Somebody's dog again, John. I think you put yourself on mute. So it's like, to me, that's totally important. So people need to think about that. It's just like, we've got these other nations now who manufacture all the product. So it's like Britain's the prime example. We manufacture nothing in the UK now, or next to nothing, maybe curling stones and whiskey. That's about it in Scotland. We're down to very limited stuff. So our CO2 emissions are very, very small. But China and India's CO2 emissions are increasing faster and faster and faster, but they're the world's factory. So we can't just suddenly point fingers and say to them, oh, well, because what happens if they turn around to us and say, oh, by the way, you're not going to get any product? You go to Walmart, there'd be nothing there. You go to Amazon, there'd be nothing there. It would be because everything's manufactured there. So you can't do that. So we've got this green crypto younger generation consumers coming up, and now they are interested in the planet and interested in what's happening and want to do their piece. They don't like, the news stations don't like this narrative that I'm talking about just now because they don't feel it's relevant, because they don't want to hear it, whatever the reason is. They don't want to just us push this agenda because they also don't want to say that America used to be the number one manufacturer in the world and it's just slipping further and further down, the totem pole, basically. So it's like, so where does it go from here? And it's like, so we've got this sort of quandary going on whereby, we want cheaper product. We want instant delivery. We want stuff sent at home. We can get it manufactured in China. We can get it manufactured in India. The quality of product that comes out from India and China is super high now. So 10 years ago, 20 years ago, used to talk about inferior quality. It's just like now they've got the best companies over there. They've opened the manufacturing there. Tesla manufactures product there. I was involved in the cable and wire industry before. Essentially India and China used to just do the low voltage cable. Now,
sure did.
And that's the small house wiring, sort of garbage stuff that anyone can manufacture. Now we're talking massive power cables. All the top manufacturing is coming from India. All the top manufacturing is coming from China. Product quality is increasing there. So we're happy to use the product because we know the quality is good.
Yes.
But again, it's like they've got the coal plants. They're creating the product. Where does it go from here? Like there must be a solution out there to help people.
With these students, the consumers, not students rather, but the consumers, the crypto, because they're conscious, it's more like, as you were saying, how to help them because they need to get involved. What I think, right? Getting involved as it relates to being aware of, these companies, how much coal are they using? Because coal is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Let's just be real about it. Coal is here to stay. It's just not right. So how do we put some controls around it? Is the question. When it comes to management and et cetera of the coal to ensure that we are meeting these new whatever agreements or standards that's being developed, trying or moving toward this net zero, because we know that coal is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. So what do we do? Blockchain, right? It can provide that, right? More so for tracking, tracing, controls around it, and making sure that now we're meeting these regulations and et cetera. And I think, like you said, China, India, that is where I see that they're doing. They have a great control of doing just that, right?
This is coal production increase in China over the last, essentially since 2010. And it increased again last year.
Exactly. But what's interesting though about them, the
you're
controls,
looking at 4 million tons of production So it's like essentially the coal production, to put it in perspective for people, the coal production in India creates more, not India and China, creates more CO2 emissions than every single airplane, every single car, every single truck, every single ship, every single vehicle in the world that creates CO2 emissions. The coal production and the coal emissions from China is greater than that, you know? And then obviously this is just the importance of this chart is it's actually just seeing that it started to go down a little bit 2014, 15, 16, but now it's rapidly increasing again, you know? So and then, you know, really, is China and India going to do what we tell them anyway? No, it's just like, why would they? Why would you start to follow an agenda when your economy and your country is just increasing all the time? You know, people saw those countries as having cheap labor force, uneducated labor force. You know, we can get cheaper product. Now they're becoming highly educated. You know, they invest in education in both those countries in a greater way than do in America now, you know. So they've got a highly educated workforce coming in. Their workforce is getting paid more money, and they're picking up all the major contracts, you know. And then you look at countries like all the Middle East. Before they would look to America and the UK for a lot of their service contracts. They're happy to go work for like all the major servicing from engineering firms in India and China, picking up the big contracts. Same in Africa. You know, it's the same thing. People need to understand that other parts of the world, whereby 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they were looking at the UK, they're looking at the US, looking at Europe, as we need to find top quality engineering partners and production partners. Now they're happy to go to China and India all the time and not only have their expertise, not only provide cheap product, but also the expertise that's coming out of that country. So what's happening to America now as well? Well, we're all talking about this CO2 emissions. We've just shown you today that the CO2 emissions are increasing. So there's more problematic with these things, but people aren't aware of this, you know? And this is the reason I wanted to put a sort of doom and gloom or a realistic impression of what we're doing, because what I want to talk about next is the new product that you've been working on, Daniel and John, in terms of CO2 tracking and allowing the consumer to understand the CO2 emissions of their product, to understand the CO2 emissions of oil wells, pump jacks, coal production, everything like this, you know, to let the viewers working. They've been working on this. Mila Arundhati, they've all been working on this product, everyone. And I think it's going to revolutionize access to information. So like, let's just talk about it now. I know it's about a month away, Arundhati says, for like full demo for the public, but let's talk about what this product you're going to do. It's going to basically provide transparency to people.
Exactly. Yeah. A great question, Alistair. Yeah. So with that, right, you know, the CO2 emissions relating to within it, carbon credits, offsets, and et cetera, right? For this transparency, we have what is called, we call it Oracle Node, particularly, which does just that for validation, verification, converting this flow of carbon credits, offsets, et cetera, and putting it, utilizing an API on the middleware to do the across any type of energy ledger. When I say energy ledger system on the blockchain, and then because we're in cybersecurity, you can construct some type of hybrid, we call it a hybrid smart contract, utilizing this Oracle node, which is basically just an API middleware, and you can do the tracking and tracing as it states here to allow, right? You can also carbon credits as NFTs. We talked about this before, converting them into NFTs. Individuals can be able to see this transparency or have a positive impact as it relates to social issues or whatever relating to, you know, tracking, you know, CO2 emissions, right? That's one case. And this use case we're working on, hopefully at the end of the month, we'd be able to kind of demo that, how this our Oracle node would be able to, how we verify, validate, right, of and tracking as it relates to CO2, carbon credits and offsets, right?
So
Or in
as
the
an
blockchain.
example,
Yeah.
as an example, to bring it down to a granular level, if
Mhm.
I was going to go and buy my Nikes in the Nike store here,
Mhm.
we could basically use this system to go, well, this Nikes were shipped across this shipping industry. It went with this manufacturing. It was traced all the way back to blockchain. So every
Mhm.
part of the production process and distribution process can be tracked to a point whereby, I appreciate this isn't demo ready, but we're maybe talking in the next year to 18 months, that a consumer can log in and track the CO2 emissions of his pair of Nikes using your system to a granular level.
Mhm.
Is this possible going forward, Daniel?
Yep. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And in addition to that, auditing, that's part of e-governance and auditing, right? Um, so yeah, using that because we are a cybersecurity company. This is where we specialize, the terms. And so you're absolutely correct. Um, from beginning all the way to the end. And so that's a great analogy, Alistair. I don't know, John, you wanted to interject or had something that's
Or how does it
So
work? How does it work, John? Explain how the hashing on the
yeah,
blockchain will be able to do this for people to see.
yeah.
So with the hashing on the blockchain,
Mm-hmm.
it's a basic simple API call that we regulate and consume work with the end partners to monitor their consumer output of their CO2 status. And we're able to secure by writing that to a chain and then build that item off that chain all the way back to the things. And if it goes on the boat, it measures how much CO2 comes out. We lock that into that particular shoe, how much and things going forward. And it's auditable. So that way, if somebody's questioning it or something like that, they can
Mm-hmm.
pull it up and go exactly see where and when and how long it took. And each item would have its own thing. So if a pair of shoes, once it gets to the consumer, we can tell
Mm-hmm.
everything that's going through. If it can even be, not outside that, let's talk about documentation of this
Mm-hmm.
and how it's going to be secured as each ledger will be marked. And what we're planning on doing with this ledgering is also not just taking it through the chain itself, but securing it by multiple forms of encryption to include maybe even pushing to the quantum realm to where we can use quantum encryption so that nobody can pull out or nobody can try to break that encryption and break that chain. So we now securing it from the start to the end using, the most advanced technology there is on these APIs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for people to think about there, just to interject, guys, is it's a bit like, we're all getting a little, well, but exception of Daniel, we're all getting a little bit chubbier, a bit fatter nowadays, So
Amen to that. I wish I had Daniel's body.
yeah, so when we go to the supermarket,
Mm-hmm.
then you're thinking, right, I'm going to get a yogurt. So I'm going to get the full fat
Mm-hmm.
one that's really tasty, or I'm going to get
Mm-hmm.
the sort of, the diet one, but you've got a calorie count on it. So you look at your calories and just think, God, I've walked 10 miles today. That's 1,000 calories. One McDonald's, that's 2,000. So it's like they don't advertise that.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But really, as consumers now, we now calorie count.
Exactly.
Is it a way that going forward, guys, using this platform you're building, that the consumer will be able to do CO2 counts for their product?
Exactly.
Yes. Making it to the thing. This bottle may take 6 CO2 credits. And so now, what do you do offset? Do you ride your bike an extra 3 miles to offset the 6 things? It's just another way for us to understand how our products across the world are being affected to our environment or to, just everyday people's uses.
And I think, and that starts to give the power to the crypto consumer, the green crypto consumer, using the blockchain, is because ultimately, if we start, there'll be 2 levels of product. There'll be one, I want the cheapest product out there, so I don't mind the CO2 emissions on that certain product. Especially if you're looking to other countries where they don't have the luxury to buy premium products because of the, their wages, etc. But, coming from the US, things like that, you can actually go in and just say, well, I can buy my set of sort of coal Nikes for like $20, but if I want my renewable energy solar panel powered Nikes, I'm prepared to pay $50. Now, as consumers, we've always driven the market. You know, people don't realize the power the consumer has. So if we suddenly start going, well, we want to get, and then Nike could put an extra little green badge in it, and then suddenly my kids, well, I want the green badge in my one. You have to pay double the fee. And then suddenly, and the thing about, you know, I know India and China, they're always going to be mass consumers, but they're also, they don't really have, you know, I know China's got a lot of coal that they produce, but they don't really have much oil. So they import a lot of oil, import a lot of coal. It's the same as India. They import a lot of coal, import a lot of oil to keep up with the manufacturing demand. But those will be the countries that if the consumers push them, then they'll end up switching more and more to renewable energy faster and faster because they'll already have the infrastructure in place. People just need to realize that any form of transition, it takes time. But if the economy is growing super fast, they're going to do that. But if the consumer starts saying, well, I want to get green Nikes, and there's a plant in China saying, well, you know, look here, we can show it. Here's like, we're right next to a solar farm. Here's the power from the solar farm. It's making the Nikes. I want the solar powered Nikes. So ultimately, what your system's going to be able to do to allow people is to not only provide information from a high level. So some of the stuff I'm talking about today, which is on the internet, we can start tracking CO2 emissions by country, things like that. But bringing it to this granular level whereby if I come in, you know, eventually, could you put in a barcode and it can just pop up your CO2 emissions? Can it be able to do that?
Yeah.
Yep.
They'll be able
QR
to do
codes. Yep. You'll be able to do it. QR codes. Yep. Exactly.
And this is really, and you know, there's a lot of government initiatives. I know Biden's talking about green energy coming in there. Everyone's switching to, you know, electric vehicles, things like that. But this is something he needs to invest in as well. And he needs to, this is the educational piece that I think that the blockchain, because people think, oh, what else does the blockchain do? It's just some crypto. But they don't realize this verification piece, what you guys are building right now, is absolutely massive in so many ways. Because suddenly, if we verified everything had a net zero in terms of the production of it, then you're going to buy that product over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, they even doing electric aircraft taxis, right? To be flying, you know, as you know, taxi services, and so they're getting into that now, right? So think about the data collection and et cetera for that, for transparency, tracking and tracing, putting that on our middleware API network to monitor, right? Data security monitoring, to monitor this flight from start to finish, from its source, right? From ground, in flight, and then back, right? So they're getting, blockchain is transformative, right? So it has, we like you mentioned, Biden administration with EV vehicles, the development of charging stations, right, across the nation. They want to have 600,000 charging stations by, I think, 2035 or 2030, between there, and they only got right now about 30,000 across the nation. So imagine, that's that data being collected, the utilization, putting that on the blockchain for transparency. That's a benefit for the consumer. When I'm going to a charging station, one charging station, I can't get a charge, etc. Find the nearest, through having this on the blockchain, transparency, to find the nearest one that I'm able to get a charge, right? So it's transformative, and so just it's a benefit for the consumer, right? And so that's sort of what we're doing, which again, our No Oracle middleware, providing that cybersecurity piece to it, data security monitoring, for better transparency, and producing this sort of like a graph technology, these security, I like to use the term, these security metrics, where your businesses and consumers can see, right, what they're getting.
Yeah, and I think for young people who are out there, they're, a lot of young people don't know what they want to do. I know you're a teacher as well, Daniel. They're starting to get into, 15, 16-year-olds. they don't realize that the blockchain can speed up this transition in energy.
Exactly. Yes.
It can speed it up. It can change due to the fact of this and meeting with them. Also, one of the things that you can do is how much are you doing to provide CO2 costs? Are you breaking down your boxes? Or are you just throwing everything in the trash? Do you have a compost? Eventually we're going to hold each other to accountability.
Exactly.
And that's actually a start now. We see that with businesses, across the things, but we as a people can do that. It doesn't matter if you're one side or the other. It really doesn't matter. But what it matters is what are you doing to help your case to become a better person or a better group? I understand there's always going to be electricity. There's always going to be coal. There's always going to be, natural gas, propane, and we're going to need it. Like in the wintertime, you're going to need natural gas and propane and coal to keep warm. You can't help it. But during the summertime, opening your windows, letting the air breeze through and shutting off your air conditioner because it gets up to 74 degrees instead of 70 degrees in your house is not a big difference, but it makes a big impact.
Yeah.
So those are little things that we can help guide this economy with this into it. So we're not just working on one to the other, but we're working on how to bring everybody as a whole together to do small little bits.
And I think for people to understand about the software you're creating as well, guys, which I think is going to be, massive transformational changes to the industry, is the fact that it's a one underlying system, that people can use. But the thing is about it is you can just plug it into essentially any other business, isn't it?
Yes.
You've got a business. You're looking to raise capital. You want to be, green capital. The money's in green energy right now. It's green investment. If you're out there running a business, Daniel and John software, we can come on there and basically we can plug it into the back end of your business, track the CO2 emissions, run reports for your investors, for your shareholders, for your stakeholders, for your customers, and they can see that you're going green. So I think that it's not that far off. And I know there's other people doing stuff like this and it's trying to get one underlying system in place. But I think the fact that you're building it in a modular system that other people can basically plug into their business.
Exactly.
And we're providing high-end security for this.
At the API level, right?
Yep.
Because that's, as John mentioned, because we already have application security, right? It's there, right? I mean, not saying it's not needed, but where we're seeing the weaknesses and just on the blockchain is at the API level security, at your external and internal APIs. And so this is what we specialize. We call it API security as a service. So you spoke it well, Alistair. It's just a plug-in to us, and this is the auditing. This is where I use the term e-governance, because at that level, this is where we focus on. That's security at that level, because that's where the weakness is currently at right now, going across systems.
And it's like, and I understand, any business is running business there. Everything's in margins. We're all trying to cut costs. We're all trying to cut things down. I think something like what you're doing right now is it's not going to be highly costly for companies, but it's going to provide you a tool to get additional funding because you tick all these green boxes. The government can start using these things. You know what I mean?
It's also going to bring your customers back to you. That's a big thing. These customers want to see it. And it doesn't matter which side you're on. If you can do a little bit or a lot, it's your call. But this will bring your customers back to your business, back to your, brick and mortar. This is how we're doing it. We're providing you both sides of the house.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's super exciting, guys. We've plugged on there for 30 minutes talking about what's happened in the market space, and going forward, we'll talk a little bit more because we want to educate people about CO2 emissions. So they can understand the benefit of the product you're developing with this. As it moves through its beta testing right now, we can maybe bring in and do some demos during the podcast as well to let people know about it. If there's any customers out there, they're interested in getting their business to become more green, get in touch. I'll put you in touch with Daniel and John. They can explain to you how their cybersecurity service works and how you can plug in this essentially, the CO2 tracking software for your business and allow your customers to see that, you're on the right path to, green energy, net zero, etc. as well.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, that's been great then. Well, thanks very much for the podcast today. Good to see you, Daniel. Good to see you, John.
Good to see you.
You too, sir.
Yep.
Love being here with you.
Yeah,
Okay,
me too.
thank
Me
you.
too. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, that's
Looking
great then,
forward.
guys. You've been
Thank
watching
you.
Boomers
Yeah.
on the Blockchain. My name's Alistair Caithness. Have a nice day.